Welcome to the One in the Many. My name is Arshak Ben-Lian. My purpose with the One in the Many podcast is to explore the process of integration as developmentally formative and therapeutically corrective factor in human psychology. The One in the Many is the study of how conscious life differentiates identity, integrates relation, regulates itself under constraint, and sustains direction through time. Subscribe to the One in the Many podcast and connect with me by writing to abenlian@oneinthemany.net. At its most fundamental level, communication is the process by which one mind makes its structure available to another mind. It is the intentional transmission of meaning through symbols, actions, or signals, such that another consciousness can reconstruct a similar integration of reality within its own cognitive field. Communication is therefore not merely the exchange of words, but the alignment of integrations. Communication is not a single act, but a developmental continuum through which differentiated experience becomes progressively structured into shareable meaning. What appears outwardly as speech or writing is only the most visible layer of a far deeper process unfolding across physiological regulation, affective orientation, behavioral patterning, conceptual articulation, and generative insight. Each level of communication reflects a corresponding degree of integration within the individual and within the knowledge structure that people create collectively. To understand communication fully, one must examine it as an ordered sequence of increasing complexity in which each level stabilizes the conditions for the next. Communication begins in the body, moves through emotion and action, becomes articulated in language, develops into explanation, matures into abstraction, and culminates in generative integration capable of reorganizing understanding itself. Across these 8 levels, communication expresses the progressive transformation of difference into structure. Physiological communication, regulation of interaction. At its most fundamental level, communication occurs through physiological signaling. Variations in breathing rhythm, heart rate variability, muscle tone, eye movement, and subtle motor adjustments transmit information about the individual's internal state. These signals operate prior to conceptual awareness and form the substrate upon which all higher communication depends. Physiological communication regulates readiness for interaction. It signals arousal, fatigue, receptivity, or threat sensitivity. Even before words are spoken, individuals register stability or instability in the presence of another. These signals function as low-level carriers of difference, analogous to variations in signal intensity in communication systems. Their primary function is regulatory rather than descriptive. They coordinate conditions under which interaction becomes possible. Within the broader theory of knowledge, this level corresponds to the presence of distinguishable signals within a field of variability. Without differentiation, at this level, no structured communication can occur. Affective communication, orientation of value. Beyond physiological signaling lies affective communication. Emotional expression communicates orientation toward the environment by conveying relevance, attraction, aversion, confidence, or concern. Facial expression, vocal tone, pacing, and emphasis transmits patterns of valuation that guide attention prior to explicit reasoning. Emotion structures salience. It indicates what matters before the individual can fully articulate why it matters. Affective communication, therefore, organizes perception by weighing the importance of elements within experience. Through emotional patterning, individuals communicate not only information, but significance. At this level, communication begins to display probabilistic regularity. Observers infer patterns and begin forming expectations regarding the orientation of another individual. Meaning emerges implicitly through repeated alignment between emotional expression and contextual conditions. 3. Behavioral communication, coherence across time. As communication increases in complexity, behavioral consistency becomes a powerful carrier of meaning. Patterns of action across contexts reveal the degree of integration achieved within the individual. Reliability, proportional response to challenge, continuity of effort, and stability of commitments communicate structure more powerfully than isolated statements. Behavior communicates through temporal continuity. Observers detect patterns that allow them to anticipate future actions. Trust emerges when behavioral signals converge toward coherence across time. At this level, communication begins to exhibit cumulative structure, enabling the formation of stable expectations. Behavioral communication corresponds to the emergence of inferential regularities. Expectations form and adjust as patterns persist or change. The individual becomes interpretable not merely through momentary expression, but through trajectory. Number 4, identity communication, continuity of structure. Identity-level communication emerges when patterns across physiological, emotional, and behavioral domains cohere into recognizable stylistic continuity. Individuals exhibit characteristic modes of reasoning, stable hierarchies of concern, and distinctive proportionality in emphasis. Through repeated exposure, observers reconstruct the structural orientation of another mind. Identity communicates integration density. It reflects the degree to which differentiation has been organized into stable coherence across domains of activity. At this level, communication begins to express the structure of the self as an organized unity rather than a collection of discrete responses. Identity communication reveals that meaning is not contained solely in particular statements, but in the continuity linking multiple expressions across contexts. 5. Denotative communication, shared reference. Explicit conceptual communication begins with denotation. Naming allows multiple minds to coordinate attention toward shared reference. Words function as cognitive coordinates, enabling individuals to identify similar units within reality. Without shared reference, no higher level communication can achieve stability. Denotative communication reduces ambiguity by establishing common points of orientation. It creates the minimal conditions required for conceptual exchange. Each word compresses prior integrations that allow the speaker and listener to refer to a common aspect of reality. At this level, communication becomes explicitly symbolic, enabling knowledge to be transmitted across individuals and across generations. 6. Descriptive communication, structured differentiation. Description expands upon naming by articulating relationships among differentiated characteristics. Properties are specified, boundaries are clarified, and distinctions are refined. Through descriptive communication, individuals align their differentiations of experience, reducing interpretive divergence. Description structures perception. It allows individuals to construct more precise internal representations of phenomena. Communication becomes increasingly efficient as shared descriptions stabilize conceptual boundaries. At this level, meaning becomes more finely grained, permitting cooperative activity requiring precision. 7. Explanatory and abstract communication, hierarchical integration. Communication achieves higher coherence when causal relationships are articulated and principles are identified. Explanation organizes observations into structured relations that allow replication of understanding. Abstract communication compresses multiple observations into unified conceptual frameworks capable of guiding reasoning across domains. Concepts function as cognitive compression structures. They reduce complexity by integrating many differentiated observations into unified principles. Through abstraction, communication becomes scalable. Ideas can be transmitted efficiently because their internal structure allows multiple applications. At this level, communication becomes cumulative. Knowledge builds upon prior integrations, producing increasingly coherent frameworks capable of guiding inquiry and action. And finally, 8. Generative communication, transformation of understanding. The highest level of communication occurs when conceptual structures themselves are reorganized. Generative communication expands the interpretive capacity of the receiver by introducing integrations that alter how experience is understood. Paradigm shifts, scientific insights, philosophical principles, and integrative synthesis operate at this level. Generative communication does not merely convey information, it transforms the structure through which information is interpreted. It expands the hypothesis space available for future learning. Once integrated, such communication alters subsequent perception, inference, and action. At this level, communication becomes creative. It produces new coherence within the field of knowledge. These 8 levels form a continuous progression linking bodily regulation with conceptual transformation. Each level stabilizes conditions necessary for the next level of complexity. Physiological signaling supports emotional orientation. Emotional orientation stabilizes behavioral coherence. Behavioral coherence reveals identity structure. identity structure supports reliable conceptual articulation. Conceptual articulation enables abstraction, and abstraction permits generative integration. Communication, therefore, reflects the progressive integration of differentiated elements into structured unity across multiple scales of organization. This developmental continuum parallels formal theories of information and knowledge. Variability at the physiological level corresponds to the presence of distinguishable signals. Pattern regularities at affective and behavioral levels correspond to probabilistic inference regarding expected outcomes. Conceptual articulation corresponds to structured integration of differentiated units into coherent frameworks. Generative communication corresponds to the expansion of conceptual architecture itself. Across all 8 levels, communication reduces uncertainty by increasing coherence. Uncertainty may appear as variability in signals, ambiguity in interpretation, or fragmentation in conceptual structure. Integration transforms this multiplicity into intelligible unity. Communication thus becomes the mechanism through which differentiation becomes meaningful structure across minds and across time. From the regulation of breathing rhythms to the articulation of scientific principles, communication expresses the same fundamental movement. The progressive organization of difference into coherence capable of guiding action and generating further knowledge. Where integration increases, communication clarifies. Where integration fragments, communication obscures. The 8 levels of communication therefore describe not merely modes of expression, but stages in the development of intelligibility itself. This is the one in the many. The principle of life is the process of integration from a single cell to an ideal human being. The story of life unfolds through integration, from a single percept to a library of knowledge. Through virtue, reason, honesty, independence, selfishness, productivity, you set your values, purpose, to achieve self-esteem and happiness. Through time and energy, from induction to integration to reduction, the smallest particle unifies matter, and the highest purpose unifies your life. You, the one in the many, matter. May you integrate your life with value-driven days.